There are moments in life when the ground feels less like earth and more like memory. You step onto it, believing it will hold you. And yet, beneath the quiet grass and stone lies a secret you rarely think about. The planet you call home is never still. The earth breathes. It stretches, sighs, and sometimes trembles, not to harm us, but because it is alive in ways we forget. The gentle firmness beneath our feet is not permanence, it is motion slowed down. A vast, patient rhythm too deep for our hurried eyes to see. Perhaps this is why earthquakes unsettle us so much. They remind us of a truth we try to ignore. Nothing is ever fixed, nothing is truly solid. Yet within this truth lies a strange comfort, for what moves is what grows, what shifts is what creates, what trembles is what makes new land, new mountains, new oceans, and even new chances for life, tonight. Let us step into the quiet mystery of earthquakes, not as disasters, not as fierce but as whispered stories of a living earth carrying secrets of time, change, and resilience. Before we begin, I invite you to take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop, let your eyes soften, and let yourself be carried gently by this story. If you find comfort in these late-night explorations, I'd love for you to join this little corner of peace by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who also seeks calm and wonder at night. And if you'd like, leave a comment below telling me where you're listening from. Together, we create a quiet map of dreamers around the world, each of us connected through curiosity and stillness. Settle in. The story is long, patient, and meant to stay with you, even as you drift to sleep. Let's begin to know about the truth about earthquakes they don't tell you. Chapter 1: The Earth Beneath the Pillow. The night is quiet now. The air is soft, like velvet pressed against the skin of the world. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps there is the faint hum of a city, the breathing of trees in the wind, or the small, steady rhythm of your own heart echoing inside your chest. In this moment, everything seems still, and yet, beneath that stillness, beneath the pillow you rest your head upon, beneath the bed that cradles you, beneath the walls and the streets and the roots of the grass outside your window, the earth is moving, always moving. It is a movement so slow, so vast, that we rarely notice it. It does not shake our cups from the shelves, nor rattle our bones with fear. It is the slow exhale of a planet that has never truly stopped breathing. From the day it was born, out of dust and fire and collapse, the earth has been in motion, trending, stretching, drifting. The surface we trust so dearly, the soil that holds our footprints, is not a frozen crust, but a restless quilt of giant plates floating on a sea of molten stone. When you close your eyes and feel the heaviness of sleep approaching, it can be comforting to imagine that the ground beneath you is a pillow of its own, not hard and unyielding, but soft with the weight of patience. The earth is vast enough to cradle all of us, yet it, too, shifts and adjusts. Like a sleeper turning quietly in the night, this is the truth earthquakes remind us of. The earth is alive in ways we forget. Far below your resting body, beyond the cool surface of the soil, there is heat, a living fire that has burned since the beginning of time. The center of our world is molten, a sun within stone, a great furnace of iron and nickel that spins and stirs. This heat rises and pushes against the crust above it, creating currents, much like the boiling of water in a pot. And upon these slow, invisible currents, entire continents drift. Imagine a raft set upon the sea. The raft looks sturdy, wooden, fixed in place. But the ocean beneath it is restless, and with time, the raft moves. So it is with us. Our homes, our mountains, our forests, our cities, they all rest upon rafts of stone, the tectonic plates, which shift inch by inch across the glowing ocean of the mantle dot at night when the world is still. It is humbling to remember that the land beneath us is not truly still at all, that even in our deepest sleep, we are sailing across the planet's interior seas, carried on stone ships whose journeys last millions of years. The Earth has 20 or so of these plates, large and small, each one pressing against the other, in slow but constant negotiation. Some drift apart, opening wide gulfs that fill with ocean water. Others crash together, crumpling like cloth, raising mountains as high as the Himalayas. Some slide past one another, quietly but firmly, storing up the tension that one day releases as an earthquake. These motions are invisible to us in daily life, and perhaps this is why earthquakes startle us so deeply. For most of our existence, we trust the ground. It is the one thing that does not betray us, the one thing that feels unchanging. And then, in a sudden breath, it shifts. It reminds us of truths we prefer to ignore, that permanence is an illusion, that stability is temporary, that even the most solid things are subject to change. But change is not the enemy. Change is how the earth renews itself. Without these shifts, the planet would stagnate, locked into silence. Without drifting plates, there would be no mountains, no valleys, no oceans. The very landscapes that comfort us, the hills that hold our villages, the rivers that shape our lives, they are the gifts of a restless planet. So when you lie in bed and drift toward sleep, you may imagine that your pillow is not resting on still ground, but on the shoulder of a giant who breathes slowly, deeply, with patience. Each tremor, each quiet shift is a sign of that life. Long before us, long before our cities, even long before the first forests stretched green across the continents, the earth was moving. The continents we know today were not always where they are now. They have wandered like slow travelers across millions of years. If you could close your eyes and let time speed forward, like pages in a book flipping too quickly to read, you would see them drift. South America breaking from Africa, Australia slipping away, India rushing north to crash into Asia and give birth to the Himalayas. Each collision a slow but certain embrace, each separation a quiet letting go, and as they moved, the earth quaked. Not with the sudden violence we fear, but with a kind of deep, steady rhythm, a pulse that guided the shaping of countenance. Earthquakes are not interruptions. They are the notes of a song the earth has been singing since its beginning. Beneath your pillow tonight, beneath your quiet breath, there are layers upon layers of stone. First the crust, thin as an eggshell compared to the whole planet. Beneath it, the mantle, vast and heavy, yet flowing slowly like warm wax. And deeper still, the core liquid fire wrapped around a solid heart. The crust is broken into plates, and these plates, though they feel eternal, are fragile in their own way. They bend, they crack, they grind against each other. And when the pressure becomes too much, when the stress outweighs the strength, the earth sighs. That sigh is what we call an earthquake. But listen closely, it is not destruction alone. It is release. Just as our own bodies tremble with the need to exhale after holding a breath too long, so does the earth. Earthquakes are not punishments, not mistakes, but the natural exhalations of a planet in motion. Close your eyes and imagine. This, you are lying not on a bed, but upon a great stone raft. Around you stretches an endless glowing sea of molten rock, orange and red like the embers of a quiet fire. The raft moves slowly, so slowly that you hardly feel it, drifting across the glowing ocean. Sometimes it brushes against another raft, and the edges scrape. Sometimes it pulls apart, leaving a deep rift that glows with fire. Sometimes it presses into another, and the edges curl upward, making mountains now imagine that you are very small upon this raft. Your home, your town, your forest, all of it sits upon this moving world. You trust the wood beneath you, but it is the water beneath that wood that holds the secret. And every so often the raft groans, a sound too deep for ears, but felt in your bones. That is the voice of the earth. That is the language of earthquakes. The science of it is vast, and yet it is also simple. Pressure builds, stone resists, pressure grows, and then, in a single moment, release. The ground shifts back into balance. What fascinates scientists is not only that this happens, but how much the earth reveals in that release. When rocks break and move, they send waves through the planet. Some are fast, darting like whispers through stone. Others are slower, rolling like waves upon the sea. These waves tell us what the inside of the earth looks like, the way a doctor listens to the body with a stethoscope. Without earthquakes, we would know far less about our planet's heart. In this way, earthquakes are also storytellers. They carry messages from deep within, reminding us of the structure we stand upon, the layers we cannot see but must trust. Lying in bed, drifting towards sleep, you might think of your own life. How often do you hold things in, keeping tension beneath the surface, until one day you must release? The earth does the same. It stores pressure in silence, but not forever. And when the moment comes, it lets go, so that balance may return. There is a lesson in that even the strongest things, stone, mountains, continents, cannot hold everything forever. They, too, must release, and perhaps that is not weakness, but strength. For in letting go, the earth makes way for new landscapes, new beginnings, new life. The earth beneath your pillow is not asleep, though it may seem so. It is breathing, it is dreaming. Its dreams are long and vast, spanning millions of years. Our lives are but moments within them, brief flickers of light against the long memory of stone, and yet we belong to this restless earth. Its movements are the reason we have mountains to climb, rivers to follow, valleys to live in. Its quakes are the reason ancient civilizations grew fertile plains, shaped by shifting land. Even the oceans owe their shapes to the drifting of plates. To rest upon the earth is to rest upon change, and to sleep tonight is to trust that even as the ground shifts, it holds you, as it has held countless generations before. So let yourself drift now. Let the thought of a breathing earth lull you into stillness. The ground beneath you is not fragile, but alive. It shifts, yes, but it also sustains. It quakes, yes, but it also creates. The pillow beneath your head rests upon the pillow of the planet, and both are softer than you might imagine. If you listen closely, not with your ears but with your heart, you may hear it. A slow, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of stone, the sigh of a planet, the truth of the earth beneath your pillow. Chapter 2. The Hidden Conversations of Stone. The world above may appear quiet tonight. The stars scatter themselves across the sky with the patience of eternity. The trees sway gently in the breeze, whispering soft music into the darkness. And you, lying there in stillness, may feel that the earth has hushed itself into silence. But silence, in the language of stone, is never empty. Beneath the surface, where no eye can see and no ear can hear, the earth is speaking. It speaks not with words, but with pressure. Not with syllables, but with the long, slow shifting of rock upon rock. Every mountain range, every canyon, every cliffside is part of a conversation that has lasted longer than humanity itself. A conversation of stress and release, of weight and resistance, of tension stored and tension surrendered. We call these places where the earth speaks faults. To most, the word suggests a crack, a line of weakness, but faults are not flaws. They are the edges where plates and blocks of the earth meet and negotiate, where their hidden conversations play out over centuries. Imagine two great stones pressed together. They want to move, but their rough edges lock. Pressure grows quietly, invisibly. Year by year, the weight increases. The desire to move builds. The stones hold, stubborn and unmoving, until finally, with a sigh that travels through mountains, they let go. That letting go that releases an earthquake, and yet it is not sudden violence. It is simply the earth answering itself, stone, speaking to stone, resuming its slow rhythm. If you were to walk along a fault line in the daylight, you might see nothing more than a ridge, a valley, or a cliff. Perhaps you would pass a wall of rock where one side seems shifted, just slightly, above the other. To the untrained eye, it is just a landscape. But to those who listen, these are the scars of old conversations, the signatures of ancient quakes, the San Andreas Fault in California, the Anatolian Fault in Turkey, the great Himalayan faults that continue to lift mountains skyward. All of them are chapters in the earth's hidden dialogue. They are not threats alone, but histories written into stone. Each quake marks not an ending, but a continuation. And if you lie here tonight, your pillow pressed gently to the earth, you may sense that these conversations are still ongoing, even if they are too deep and too patient for us to notice. Let us drift deeper now, into the world where these conversations happen. Close your eyes and imagine yourself descending down past the roots of trees, down beyond the soil and the stones we touch with our hands. Go lower still, where darkness thickens and air disappears, where only rock remains. Hear the faults. Wait, they are not cracks of emptiness, but planes of contact. Surfaces where rock has pressed against rock for millions of years. These planes remember. Every slip, every release, every tremor leaves behind a trace. Like lines etched into skin by time, faults carry the memory of the earth's shifting. Some quakes are small murmurs, felt only by the most sensitive instruments. Others are loud cries, shaking cities and seas. Yet all of them are part of the same dialogue. Faults are the earth's journals, written not in ink but in pressure. They tell of continents drifting, of mountains rising, of valleys sinking. They remind us that the ground we trust is in constant conversation with itself, with forces we cannot command. There are different ways the earth speaks through faults. Sometimes two plates pull apart, and the land between them sinks, forming long valleys like the Great Rift Valley in Africa. Sometimes they push together, and the crust crumples upward, building mountains so high they brush the edges of the sky. And sometimes they slide past one another, each unwilling to yield, like dancers brushing shoulders in an eternal, friction-filled waltz. Each kind of movement produces its own kind of voice, a deep, groaning bass when countenances collide, a gentle but insistent whisper when they pull apart, a sharp, sudden cry when they slip past each other. And though we cannot hear these voices as sound, the earth records them in stone. Scientists listen differently. They place instruments, delicate seismographs near faults to hear the conversations we cannot. These devices pick up the trembling of the ground, translating stone language into waves on paper, into data we can understand. Each spike and curve is the earth speaking. But even without machines, humans have always sensed these conversations. Ancient peoples told stories of the earth's movements. Some spoke of giant serpents writhing underground, others of great gods, shifting in their sleep. These myths were not wrong, only metaphorical. They were ways of naming the mystery, of describing the invisible dialogue beneath their feet. For they knew, as we know now, that the earth is not silent. If you let your mind wander tonight, you might think of your own hidden conversations, the ones you hold inside, unspoken, carried in silence, until one day they emerge. The earth does the same. It carries tension deep within, and then, when the weight is too much, it speaks. These are not careless outbursts, but necessary releases. For just as we need to let go of words unspoken, of feelings unshared, so does the earth need to let go of its pressure. Faults, then, are not signs of weakness. They are signs of communication, signs of resilience. Without them, the earth would not adjust, would not adapt. It would break in silence, without release. Instead, it speaks often, in whispers and tremors, in murmurs too soft for us to hear. Only sometimes does it raise its voice, reminding us of its strength. Consider this: when an earthquake begins, it does not start with chaos. It starts with a small slip, a fraction of a second, a shift of rock just a few inches. And from that slip, waves spread outward, like ripples across a pond. The ripples grow, traveling through the crust, until they reach us at the surface. But at the heart of it, the earthquake is simply two stones resolving their disagreement. It is less an act of destruction than an act of balance. And yet, standing in the midst of it, humans often forget this. We see only the shaking walls, the moving ground, the uncertainty. We forget that this is not the earth working against us, but the earth continuing its endless dialogue with itself. The hidden conversations of stone remind us that life is built on tension. Pressure builds, and it must be released. Change resists, and it must be accepted. Stability cracks, and it must be renewed. When you think of your own life, perhaps you notice the same patterns. Relationships where words go unspoken until they finally burst. Feelings held tight until they tremble through the body. Even the quiet sigh at the end of a long day is a kind of release, an echo of the earth's own rhythm. We are not so different from stone. We, too, carry our conversations within us. We, too, tremble when the pressure is too great, and we, too, must sometimes crack in order to begin again. The earth does not apologize for its quakes, nor should it. They are not mistakes. They are not flaws. They are simply part of the language of a living planet, a language of patience, tension, and release. Think now of a stone you may have held in your hand once, perhaps on a walk along a river or a quiet path. It felt solid, eternal, unchanging. But that stone, too, was once part of a mountain, and that mountain was once pushed upward by the meeting of plates. And beneath it all, there were faults, conversations carried on in silence for millions of years, That little stone in your palm was a word from the earth's dialogue, a fragment of a sentence spoken in the language of geology. So, as you drift deeper into stillness tonight, remember that you rest not only upon the earth, but within its story. Every tremor, every quake, every fault line is part of a long and gentle conversation, carried out in silence but written in stone. The hidden conversations of stone remind us that silence is never truly empty. It is full of voices we cannot hear, of movements too slow for us to notice. It is full of patience, full of resilience, full of release, and perhaps, as you close your eyes, you might feel the comfort in that truth, that even when nothing seems to move, something deep below is always speaking, always adjusting, always holding the balance. The earth is never silent. It is only speaking in a language too vast for us to hear. Chapter 3. When the world sways. Like water, there are moments when the ground beneath us feels less like stone and more like tide. A sudden shift, a slow rolling, a sensation as though the entire earth has loosened its roots and chosen to move, like the sea. In those moments, people often describe the world as swaying, as if the ground has borrowed the language of water. And though it may sound poetic, it is also true. For when an earthquake begins, the planet moves, not as a rigid body, but as waves. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself standing on a wooden pier that stretches out into the ocean beneath. Your feet, the water is calm, but then a boat glides by, leaving behind ripples that spread outward in circles. The pier rises and falls, gently at first, then stronger, as the waves move beneath it. This is how the earth behaves when an earthquake starts. Not with jagged breaks alone, but with rippling motion, waves of energy moving through rock as easily as they move through water. The earth has its own seas, though they are made not of liquid but of stone, and when pressure releases at a fault, it is as though a stone has been dropped into that hidden sea, sending waves across the planet. These are seismic waves, ripples of energy that carry the voice of the quake through mountains, deserts, and oceans. There are two primary voices in this watery language of stone, the fast one and the slow one. Scientists call them P waves and S waves. To you, lying in stillness, they can be imagined as two kinds of dancers, each moving differently, yet both part of the same rhythm. The P wave, the primary wave, is quick and restless. It moves by compressing and stretching, pushing and pulling the ground in the same direction it travels. Imagine pressing your palms together and releasing, pressing and releasing again. That is the P wave's motion-like sound itself, like breath traveling through the body of the earth. The S wave, the secondary wave, is slower but far more noticeable. It moves side to side, up and down, shaking the ground like water in a glass. If P waves are whispers, S waves are rolling laughter. They are the ones we feel most, the ones that make buildings sway and trees shiver together. These waves carry the trembling of a fault across the planet, turning stone into something that behaves. For a few moments, like water, if you were to lie quietly upon the earth during a quake, you might notice it begins with a jolt swift, sharp, like a knock at the door. That is the P wave, arriving first. It is often brief, almost a warning. Then a pause, and suddenly the world rolls beneath you, swaying and tossing as though you were standing on a raft at sea. That is the S wave, slower to arrive but stronger in presence, and yet even these are only the beginning. There are other waves, ones that skim along the surface of the earth, like ripples on the skin of water. Rayleigh waves rolled the ground in circles, making the soil rise and fall like ocean swells. Love waves move it side to side, twisting the land like ribbon in the wind. These surface waves, though slower, can travel far, shaking cities hundreds of miles away. The earth, in its trembling, becomes an orchestra of waves, each one with its own rhythm, its own voice, its own effect on the land and the people above. Think for a moment about what it means for rock to behave like water. Stone, in our minds, is the very image of solidity. We trust it, build upon it, carve it, rely on it to stay. And yet, in those moments of release, it flows, it sways, it carries motion the way a pond carries ripples. There is humility in this truth, that even stone, which we call solid, is not so different from water, that solidity is an illusion, stability only a pause in the dance. Beneath the appearance of stillness lies the possibility of flow, and if the earth can sway like water, then perhaps so can we. Perhaps what we call rigidity in our own lives, our fears, our certainties, may also in the right moment move and soften, rolling like waves until balance returns. Scientists have learned much from these waves, because P waves and S waves travel at different speeds. The time between their arrivals reveals how far away the earthquake began. By listening carefully, by marking the moments, seismologists can map the epicenter, the place on the surface above the fault that slipped. It is as though the earth is tapping on different doors at different times, and by listening to the order of knocks, we can find where the voice originated. With enough instruments scattered across continents, we can pinpoint the source of the quake, even before the strongest waves reach faraway cities. In this way, the earth not only moves, but teaches. It allows us to read its interior the way a doctor reads the body through sound. Earthquakes are frightening, yes, but they are also revelations. Without them, we would not know that the earth has a liquid outer core or a solid inner one. It was by listening to seismic waves that scientists uncovered the very heart of the planet. So when the earth sways like water, it is not only motion, it is knowledge carried outward, written in ripples of stone. Close your eyes again and imagine lying upon a great ocean of rock. Beneath you, the crust seems steady, but then, deep below, a fault slips. The first ripples spread, tiny compressions racing through the stone. They reach you in an instant of faint shiver, like a whisper in the ground. That is the P wave, and then, moments later, a rolling begins. The earth rises and falls beneath you, swaying like a raft caught in gentle swells. That is the S wave. Then larger waves arrive, circling the earth's surface, lifting, twisting, rocking the very skin of the planet. You are no longer standing on solid ground, but floating as though the entire earth has remembered its liquid heart. And in that floating, you realize that solidity was never absolute. All things, even stone, carry within them the memory of water. There are places in the world where people are familiar with this swaying. In Japan, in Chile, in Indonesia, in California, people learn to stand calmly as the ground rolls, to let the waves pass. Children practice in schools, taught to tuck beneath desks, to wait out the trembling. And in their calmness lies an understanding that this is simply the earth's way of speaking, the language of stone turning briefly into tide. Some describe the sensation as unnerving, others as oddly peaceful. To feel the earth sway like water is to be reminded of its immensity, its power, and its patience. It is to know that we live not upon something rigid, but upon something alive, When you think of the sea, you may think of its endless waves, its constant rise and fall. The ocean never stands still, and yet, in its movement, it holds beauty, rhythm, and balance. The same is true of the earth. Its movements are not chaos, but cadence, not interruption, but continuation. And though earthquakes can frighten us, beneath the fear there is also wonder. For the ground beneath us is not dead. It is alive with motion, alive with memory, alive with rhythm. The swaying of the earth is not a flaw, it is a reminder that we, too, are part of a world that moves, that flows, that never stays the same. So, tonight, as you lie in stillness, imagine the world beneath you not as rigid stone, but as water in disguise. Imagine the P waves rushing like whispers, the S waves rolling like deep laughter, the surface waves circling the globe like songs sung from shore to shore. The earth sways like water, and you are carried upon its waves. Let yourself float with it, gently, softly, trusting that in the motion there is meaning, and in the swaying there is peace. The world is never still, but in its movement it cradles you. In its swaying it rocks you to sleep. Chapter 4. The cities that listen in silence. Cities have always been thought of as places of noise, motion, and relentless human ambition. Streets filled with the endless rhythm of footsteps, markets shouting with color and sound, machines grinding, and neon lights insisting on being noticed. Yet, beneath the clamor, there lies a silence that few pay attention to, a silence not of absence, but of listening. The city itself listens, patiently, with the endurance of centuries, and when the earth stirs, that silence becomes the stage upon which entire lives are rewritten. Earthquakes in cities are unlike any other natural event. In the wilderness, the ground quivers and trees sway, but there are no skyscrapers to tumble, no bridges to snap, no millions of lives contained in fragile rooms stacked upon each other. In cities, the earth's whisper becomes magnified, translated into falling glass, groaning steel, and the sudden darkness of power failing. To understand cities in silence is to understand how human ambition has built towers atop a listening, restless ground, and how, when the ground speaks, those towers lean in and shudder like fearful listeners. The architecture of vulnerability. Every city is a gamble. Foundations are sunk deep into soil and stone. Calculations are made. Steel is forged to resist the invisible hand of gravity. Yet gravity is only one force among many. The architects, the engineers, and the planners work with their measurements and blueprints, believing they can conquer weight and wind. But earthquakes remind us that the ground itself is not fixed. It moves like breath, expanding and contracting in rhythms so large we can barely comprehend them. In the silence of a city at night, when traffic fades and neon hums quietly, the buildings themselves seem to breathe. The glass windows shiver against the wind, the concrete cools, and deep below, in the soil, pressures are gathering. A fault line may run beneath a bustling district, unseen beneath restaurants, subways, and office towers. No one notices. The city grows upward, confident, unaware. But when the earth chooses to speak, the silence of listening becomes terrifyingly real. Buildings that once seemed eternal reveal their fragility. Steel bends like reeds, concrete cracks like thin ice, and the very spaces designed for human life collapse upon it. This is the silence of cities listening, the brief pause between the first rumble and the cascade of falling stone, where millions of hearts race in unison and every sound becomes amplified, the creak of a ceiling, the fall of a picture frame, the sudden stop of laughter, the human pulse within the silence. When an earthquake touches a city, time fractures. Seconds become stretched into eternities. Imagine a crowded cafe on a bright afternoon where people talk over steaming cups. The first tremor arrives like a subtle suggestion. A spoon rattles, a chair trembles, conversation halts, laughter freezes in the air, and everyone listens. For one suspended breath, the cafe becomes utterly silent. The city listens too, holding its breath with them. Then comes the sway. Chandeliers rock, cups topple, plaster cracks. People rise, some run, others crouch, and the silence transforms into chaos. Yet, beneath the screams and crashes, there remains a profound listening, the kind of listening born from terror, where each person waits for the world to decide whether it will release them or bury them. Cities magnify this paradox. In small villages, earthquakes scatter people into fields or open ground. But in cities, there is nowhere to run. Towers surround you, walls confine you, and above your head thousands of tons of stone and glass lean uncertainly. The silence is heavier, more oppressive, because it is filled with the weight of human fear multiplied by millions. The memory of cities do not forget. The concrete may be rebuilt, but the memory of shaking lives on in stories, in architecture, in the cautious glance upward when a train passes too heavily or a truck rattles the street. Think of San Francisco, whose hills once danced with flames after the quake of 1906. Think of Mexico City in 1985, where thousands were buried beneath collapsed structures, and where, even today, survivors recall the silence before the screams. City's silence becomes imprinted with memory. A plaza that once served as a gathering place may also hold the shadows of collapsed buildings. A neighborhood may stand rebuilt, yet the ground beneath still remembers the moment it buckled. People, too, carry that memory, a sudden unease when the ground shakes slightly, a pause in the night when the window panes hum with wind, reminding them of another kind of vibration, the language of collapse. What does a city say when it listens? In silence. Its language is the groan of bridges, the sigh of shifting earth, the moan of steel strained beyond design. These are not human words, but they communicate nonetheless. Fragility, endurance, warning. Picture a towering skyscraper. From the street, it looks indestructible, its mirrored glass catching the sunlight, its steel bones hidden from view. But during an earthquake, the skyscraper bends. Floors sway inches, even feet, side to side. The groan of this movement is the building's language of survival, a dance designed by engineers to keep it standing. Yet for those inside, that groan is not reassuring. It is the sound of trust strained to breaking, the sound of human ambition, trembling before the earth's deeper rhythm. Collapsed buildings have their own silence. After the roar of falling stone comes the stillness, filled only with dust drifting through sunbeams. Survivors trapped beneath rubble describe the quiet as overwhelming, broken only by distant cries or the sound of rescuers digging. This is the silence cities listen to most intently, the silence of those waiting to be found, resilience rising from rubble. And yet, cities do not end with collapse. They rise again, stubborn, resilient, fueled by the collective will of their people. When silence falls after destruction, hands begin to dig, voices begin to call out names, and new plans are drawn on fresh paper. From the silence of disaster, the noise of rebuilding begins. Tokyo is a city that listens in silence with remarkable resilience. Built atop one of the most seismically active regions of the world, it has learned to sway with the earth instead of resisting it. Skyscrapers are designed with hidden springs and counterweights, foundations that float, and systems that hum quietly until they are needed. Here, the silence is not fear, but preparation. The city, listening to the earth and learning to move with it. But not all cities are so prepared. Many continue to build with arrogance, ignoring the whispers of the ground beneath. For them, silence remains dangerous, waiting for the day it breaks with sudden violence, the stillness after the storm. Perhaps the most haunting silence of all comes not during, but after an earthquake. Imagine a vast cityscape at dawn, streets, once filled with traffic, now coated in dust. No horns, no chatter, no footsteps, only the distant call of sirens and the flutter of birds unsettled from their nests. The city seems to hold its breath, as though uncertain whether it still lives. This stillness is fragile. It carries the grief of lives lost, the shock of structures broken, the weight of uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring. Yet it also carries something else, an intimacy between human beings who, for a few moments, truly listen to the same silence together. Strangers become kin in disaster, neighbors become lifelines. In that silence, humanity rediscovers itself, the city as a living being. To speak of cities that listen in silence is to recognize them as living beings, not alive in the way a tree or a bird is, but alive through the millions of hearts that beat within them, through the memories layered in stone and steel, through the way they tremble and recover. Cities breathe, suffer, and endure. They listen not with ears, but with walls and bridges, with subways and towers, all attuned to the shifting murmurs of the earth. When the earth stirs, cities bend close, like great listeners straining to catch a word. They may shatter, but they also remember, and in remembering, they change. The cities that listen in silence are not passive. They are partners in an unspoken conversation with the ground beneath. Every blueprint drawn, every beam raised, every foundation dug is part of this dialogue. When the world sways, cities answer not always with grace, sometimes with collapse, but always with the acknowledgement that they too are fragile listeners, resting upon a restless earth, and in their silence we find our own. For in the quiet pause between tremors, between collapse and rebuilding, between fear and hope, we too are reminded that we are listeners, that our lives, our ambitions, our cities all rest upon the hum of a planet that speaks in movements older than time itself. The city listens, the earth speaks, and in that exchange we live. Chapter 5. The gentle truth of a restless planet. The earth is never still, even in the moments when our feet press against what feels like solid ground. Even when the pavement beneath us appears unyielding and permanent, something beneath is, always shifting, always moving, always whispering its quiet truth. To live on this planet is to be held in the arms of something that breathes, something restless, something alive. We grow up imagining the ground as certainty, as the anchor that steadies us against storms, winds, and passing years. But the truth is softer and deeper than that, gentler, yet also more humbling. The ground does not stay still because it cannot. Its restlessness is not violent rebellion, but a natural rhythm, one that has shaped mountains, rivers, and valleys, and one that will continue long after our names are forgotten. And when we begin to listen closely, we discover that this restlessness is not something to fear, but something to understand. It is the quiet pulse of a planet that is always teaching us, always reminding us of our place in its unfolding story. The illusion of stillness. Imagine standing in a vast meadow at dawn. The air is crisp, the grass is damp, and the world feels perfectly at rest. Nothing moves. The horizon is calm. The silence is so deep that it almost hums. Yet, at that very moment, the ground beneath your shoes is not still at all. It is floating on molten currents of rock. It is drifting on plates of stone as wide as oceans, sliding at the pace of fingernails growing, sometimes colliding with unimaginable force, sometimes pulling apart to create new worlds. The illusion of stillness is one of the planet's greatest gifts to us, for without it we might feel overwhelmed by the truth that the very ground we rely on for security is a part of a restless ballet. The continents themselves are passengers on an endless voyage carried on seas of fire and stone. We do not notice this daily sway, for the earth is patient. Its restlessness moves at scales larger than our lives, larger than our memory. But when the ground shudders, when walls tremble and rivers leap from their beds, we are reminded abruptly, painfully, that the stillness was only ever a mirage. Soft power of time. If you touch a rock, it feels eternal, hard, unyielding, immune to change. Yet give it enough time, and the strongest stone will crumble into dust, reshaped by water, wind, and the subtle movements of the earth. This is the gentle truth of our planet. Its restlessness is not always sudden or dramatic. More often, it works quietly across centuries and millennia, sculpting landscapes without hurry. Mountains rise, not in explosions of force, but in imperceptible increments. Valleys deepen not through sudden collapse, but through the patient carving of rivers that follow their course for ages. There is comfort in this gentleness. The earth's restlessness is not always the violence of earthquakes or eruptions. It is also the patient persistence of change, the reminder that nothing is truly permanent, and that even the hardest things in life, like stone, like grief, like fear, can be softened by the flow of time, when restlessness becomes reminder. And yet, sometimes the planet does not move in whispers. Sometimes it cries out. Sometimes it shakes so fiercely that cities collapse and lives are torn apart. In those moments, it is tempting to call the earth cruel, to see its restlessness as punishment. But beneath the pain lies another truth. The earth does not move against us. It does not choose sides. Its shifting is neither moral nor malicious. It is simply the way of a living planet. These moments, though devastating, also serve as reminders. They pull us out of illusions of control. They awaken us from the dream that we are the rulers of the ground we walk upon. In a single tremor, the earth reminds us that we are guests, not masters. And perhaps this reminder, though harsh, carries a kind of strange mercy, for it returns us to humility, to awe, to the recognition that we are part of something vaster and older than our brief lives. The rhythm of breath, if you listen carefully, the earth seems to breathe. The tides rise and fall. Winds circle the globe in endless cycles. The crust itself bends and releases, storing energy like lungs filling with air, then exhaling in tremors. This rhythm is not unlike our own. Our hearts beat, our lungs rise and fall, our bodies shift and adapt. We are restless creatures living on a restless planet, and in this shared restlessness lies connection. To see the planet as alive is not only poetic but profoundly true. Its inner fires pulse like blood. Its oceans circulate like veins. Its cycles sustain us the way breath sustains the body. And when we feel the earth's restlessness, whether in the slow shaping of mountains or the sudden cracking of the ground, it is like feeling the heartbeat of something far larger than ourselves. Restlessness as teacher from the earth's movements. We can learn lessons no book can fully hold. We learn resilience, for the planet shows us how to rebuild. Cities destroyed by earthquakes rise again, shaped with new wisdom, new strength. Forests that burn grow back richer in soil, fuller in growth. Rivers that flood carve fertile valleys. Out of disruption comes renewal. We learn impermanence, for the ground we stand on will never be the same ground tomorrow. Continents shift, coastlines retreat, deserts bloom and fade. Nothing is fixed, and so we, too, are reminded not to cling too tightly to what must inevitably change. We learn humility, for the earth does not bend to our will. We build skyscrapers and tunnels, but the ground beneath them decides their fate. We map the world, but the world redraws its own lines. To live wisely is not to fight this truth, but to move in rhythm with it, the silence after the shaking. One of the most haunting truths of earthquakes is not the shaking itself, but the silence that follows. In the moments after the ground stills, the air feels heavy, as if holding its breath. Dust lingers, people whisper, and the world seems unsure of its return to calm. This silence carries weight. It is the pause in which we realize how fragile everything is. It is the moment when strangers hold each other, when voices break into prayer, when we understand that beneath the noise of daily life, we are all bound to the same trembling ground. And yet, this silence is also a gift, for it teaches us presence. It strips away distractions and leaves us face to face with what matters most: connection, survival, love. In the silence after the shaking, we remember what it means to be human, a restlessness we can hold. Though we cannot control the earth's movements, we can learn to live with them, to prepare, to adapt, to carry both caution and awe. Engineers build with flexibility, allowing buildings to sway with the ground rather than crumble against it. Communities create rituals of remembrance, honoring those lost and celebrating resilience. Scientists listen closely to the murmurs of stone, measuring, predicting, seeking to hear the planet's whispers before they become shouts. And in our own lives, we too can hold restlessness with gentleness. We can see it not as enemy but as companion, a reminder that life is never stagnant, never fixed. Just as the earth is alive, so are we, and our restlessness, our longing. Our desire for change is part of that same truth. The gentle truth of a restless planet is this: the ground will move. It has always moved, and it always will. We cannot demand permanence from something born of fire and water, something sculpted by cycles older than time itself. But instead of fearing this truth, we can embrace it, for it teaches us to live fully in the moment, to build not only with stone but with love, to treasure the fragile miracle of being alive on a world that is always becoming. The earth's restlessness is not a threat but a teacher, not a curse, but a reminder. It asks us to listen, to respect, to find beauty not in permanence but in change. And if we can hold this truth with tenderness, we will find not fear, but a deeper kind of peace, the peace of belonging to a living, breathing world. When you lay your head down at night, the ground beneath you is moving. It is not loud, not violent, but quiet, steady, patient. It shifts with the pull of tides, the drift of continents, the deep fire at its heart. And perhaps this is what it means to live well, to know that nothing beneath us is truly still, yet to rest anyway, to accept that we are small, yet to love fiercely, to understand that the world is restless, yet to find within that restlessness a gentle kind of truth. The earth is alive, and so are we. And in its endless shifting, we can learn not just how to endure, but how to belong. In the end, earthquakes are not only about destruction. They are reminders, silent but forceful, that the ground we trust every day is alive, shifting and carrying stories older than humanity itself. They teach us that nothing, not even the earth beneath our feet, is permanent. And yet, within that truth lies a kind of beauty, that we are part of a restless, breathing planet, one that is constantly changing, creating, and renewing. So the next time the ground trembles, remember, isn't just chaos. It is the earth speaking in its oldest language, one we are only beginning to understand. Thank you for joining me tonight in uncovering the truths most never hear about earthquakes. Until next time, rest easy and good night.